When you have a sec, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. It would mean a lot to us. The following podcast contains coarse language and subject matter that you might find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. The night clouds are separating. The moon casts upon stone, revealing what lies beneath. Those that have passed, those forgotten, becoming part of the earth from which they once roamed. Then there's a quiver, a movement of dirt, eyes open to reveal the life after. Sleep is interrupted, chills down your back. They say your name. You see them in the shadows. There are lights in the sky. There's something in the forest. Your dreams replay while you're awake. Some will believe you and others will not, but it doesn't matter. Who writes a better ghost story than that of a ghost? And who will listen? We are the bridge between here and there, a radio frequency leading you to the realms of the unknown. Ready to take your call. Welcome to the world beyond the veil. This is Geist. Although most of you already know the Blumbergs, they were in Season 2, Episode 10. You may want to listen to that episode first, but here's a recap. The Blumbergs moved from downtown Toronto to Dresden, Ontario, to a Victorian funeral home that they've renovated into a 14,000 square foot dream house. The Second Empire architecture and Heather's interior design will knock your socks off. The 38-room mansion has a lot of character and a lot of ghosts. There's the gray man that walks the halls. There's the blue lady seen on the stairs. There are conversations and music heard coming from the basement, and an uncomfortable spirit that I call a loomer in one of the upstairs rooms. All of them remain, but now that the family has settled, others have surfaced.
I think it's 18 months, 2 years since we last spoke. And the house has been crazy ever since. I'm not going to lie. It's to the point where the activity in the house that was happening on occasion now happens every single day. Almost to the point where a lot of the time we don't even acknowledge it, you know. So there's someone walking around and opening and closing doors, or running down the stairs, or we hear laughter or talking. We only even really comment on it amongst ourselves if it's something new or something really loud. And it's been such an interesting journey, and I love it so much. You can't understand the connection I have and how much I enjoy it.
These days, Aaron, Noah, and Raph have temporarily moved to Ottawa for work and for school. Heather stayed behind, which a lot of the time leaves her alone in the home with a lot of ghosts.
I do feel that but particularly I, am more comfortable in the house. I'm more receptive all the time to what's happening. I believe and I really hope that the residents of the house and the passers through understand that they are welcome here, that they are respected, that, you know, I view this as their house. I'm a caretaker for a while, but It's their place. And I think they understand that. And I think that's why so much more happens. It's almost like they've relaxed and are going about their business. I think having a family here that's receptive to them, we're a weird family, there's no doubt about it, but we're very loving and very close and we have a lot of fun. And I think they like being part of that. It's not a funeral home anymore where people come and go with high emotions. We're a steady state and they've got to know us and they know they can be themselves. Again, I sound insane. I think the big thing that I have noticed with the house and other people's experience of the house is there's a little bit of, some people are just naturally sensitive and they will come in the house and the residents that are here pick up on that. So they can have experiences. They'll hear the footsteps, they'll hear the voices, maybe they'll be touched. That happens a lot. But a lot of people aren't that sensitive, or a lot of people are skeptics and they come in, and especially the people that come and stay with us for a few nights, what we find is the first night, often nothing happens, or the first day and night, often nothing happens. By the second night, little something will happen. Like the second night, we have a lot of people that report that they've heard footsteps, or they were aware of a presence, or they saw something out of the corner of their eye, and it builds.
I think, as everybody knows, I'm not a huge believer, and I certainly wasn't when we first came here, but there have been a few things that have, in hindsight, freaked me out a bit. My cousin and his partner were up staying over Christmas and New Year. They've got young kids, and we worked out so the first time the house has had sort of babies in it, proper babies, sort of and family member babies, probably for 50, 60 years, if not more. So there's a different energy in the house.
Nick and his partner, Ashley, and their 2 children came to stay with us for a week over Christmas. Ashley is a believer. Nick was far more of a skeptic. And exactly that happened. First day, first night, nothing really. Second day, Nick felt like he encountered someone in the hallway.
Third or fourth night in, I can't quite remember which one, and our Sonos speakers turn on in isolated rooms. So the first time it happened when Nick and Ashley were here, the speaker that turned on is actually a TV speaker, which is why we don't use it for music. It turned on above where the kids are sleeping. So it was the floor above, it was the speaker above them, on the floor above that turned on. And it was funny, the next day, Nick was like, were you guys playing music in the middle of the night? I was like, well, we weren't, but the house was.
Their son actually started talking to Dee Dee, a child in the house. The next day, they were woken up in the night by children running around and playing, and eventually playing with their son. Then it was they heard crying, and then they saw shadows, and so in the course of a week, gone from, no, not really, to, oh yeah, there's something here. And it's fascinating.
Heather disclosed to me that Aaron's cousins continued to struggle with their son speaking to Dee Dee, even after they left, for months actually. They had to call someone to help remove Dee Dee from their home, if things weren't creepy enough.
So we have sort of 3 categories of residents, as I mentioned, as I see them. Sort of my full-time residents, my kind of regulars, sounds like a bar, but regulars that are always in, and then that sort of passes through. There's 3 or 4 children, very young children, sort of 5 and under, that are here. Dee Dee seems to be kind of the leader of the pack. Dee Dee, short for Deirdre. She seems to be a very happy young girl that's here. She connects with the children that come in here very strongly. It seems to be they love the younger children. On the main floor of the house, there's a main hallway that comes through into the main staircase, and you'll hear footsteps running down there, 2 at a time usually. You'll hear laughing on occasion. Unfortunately, occasionally you do hear crying as well. we've got an EVP of a child saying mummy. We had young boy 2 who was here who played with Dee Dee and talked to Dee Dee. There was no way he could know that there was a child called Deirdre that had been here. How does a 2-year-old know that? And he pulled up the name Dee Dee. So Dee Dee is, she was a daughter of one of the former residents that lived here, and she died at a young age. It's a very sad story. Unfortunately, her and 4 of her siblings all died in the house. So some of the other residents of the house, there's a gentleman I call him the Grey Man. I think I may have mentioned him before, but he's ever present. Middle-aged man, grey trousers, greying hair, white shirt, and he walks through the green parlour, the hallways, up the main staircase, through the hallway of the 2nd floor, back down again. He doesn't interact with us, doesn't even make eye contact with us, so we thought he was residual. But interestingly enough, when Richard Estep and his team came to investigate the house, we were talking about the Grey Man. In the room we were in, the lights started flashing on and off. So we all paused, and then Richard asked the question, is that you? Are you you're not residual, you're communicating with us? And the lights went on and off again. That has never happened to us, it only happened with the team here. But it was like, okay, well, maybe there's more going on there. And it's got to the point where we'll be sitting watching TV and he'll walk by. I won't even say anything, I'll just point, and Aaron knows exactly who I'm talking about or pointing at. I don't know who this is. So there are, there's footsteps that go up and down from the 2nd floor up to the 3rd floor, which was the servant area, which is now Noah's floor. They go up and down there, they go through into her main area, her lounge, and they close the door behind them, or they open it to come out and come back down. It's not very heavy, so we think female. They never talk. Happens once or twice a day. It's not threatening, but it's distinct in that we know it's that. We do find when Noah's away, if she's staying with friends or as she is at the moment in Ottawa, her floor is busy. People are indignant that she's not there, and they're walking around, opening and closing doors, lights go on and off. Her cushions on her sofa move around. I think it's kind of charming that they miss her.
What's with the hello lady? Does she still say hello?
So Aaron and I have a theory. Actually, it was Aaron's theory. So he can talk about it more, but we don't know if it was a hello lady or if it was the mimic.
You heard right. A mimic. And it just gets creepier from there. A mimic is a copycat ghost that mirrors traits and behaviors of the living. The unsettling thing is that it has been suggested by many that these imposter voices could be demonic in nature. It's also been said that they're trickster entities who enjoy irritating people. It will often start out by copying the voice of someone you live with, or someone that's close to you. You will hear it say your name, or some other form of address that is common for that person to call you. It also can say other things. Normally this happens when you're alone, or when you know that person is not around. The mimic does this to incite fear, which is a type of energy that they feed off of. The more you fear it, the more you acknowledge it, the stronger it becomes. Mimics can even appear in the physical form of someone you know. Being able to see a mimic means that it has grown stronger. Although I don't know if this is the case, the upper hand for the Blumbergs is that they don't scare easy.
Again, until this started happening, I didn't even believe in mimics, so I don't know, but the mimic in what we're experiencing is a physical entity sometimes that looks exactly like the person. Their voice is exactly that, but the mannerisms are the same. The speech pattern, the tone, everything.
The mimic has presented itself as Aaron, Heather, and Raph. It has also presented itself as other entities or visitors to the house. And it wasn't subtle with its first appearance.
I think the main one was H and I was sitting in the TV room on the big sort of horseshoe couch. It wasn't particularly late, I don't know, 8:30 at night. And I was about to get up and get ourselves a drink from the bar, and I saw Raph walk past through the green parlor towards the kitchen. As he does, he comes up from the basement, comes up the stairs. You sort of hear him come through the hallway. So as I said, "Oh, Raph, here, do you want something to drink?" Didn't really think any of it. I stood up and walked towards the bar. He didn't respond to me. I was like, "Oh, that's weird." He normally says something. So I shouted to him, like, "Hey, Raph, getting a drink. What, do you want me to make you something as well?" No response. So I walked back through the green parlor myself into the kitchen. No one there. I'm like, "Oh, that's weird. He's moving very quickly." Stuck my head into the garage thinking maybe he'd gone a weird way back down to his basement room. No one in there. So I was like, okay, that's strange. Maybe I just missed him. But I'd definitely seen him. It was his height, his build, his gait, because he's quite tall. And so I called him. The easiest way to find people in the house is to just to call them or text them. So I called him and I said, "Hey, why are you ignoring me? What do you want to drink?" He's like, "What are you talking about? I haven't been upstairs at all."
Raph called in from Ottawa.
So even though I haven't really had any personal experiences with the weird, paranormal stuff, apparently I've been at the center of it. Apparently I've been in the house when I know for a fact I haven't been. They've seen me walking by from the basement to the first floor, even though I've been out of town, which is a little unsettling, if a little flattering, I guess. So I guess that's kind of compensation for my lack of personal experience. They're just kind of forcing me into it at this point.
And that sort of made me think back to one of my very early experiences in the house when I was working here in the middle of the day. And I heard a lady downstairs, which at the time I thought was Becky, who helps us look after the house, shout hello. But there was no one there, and I knew there was no one in the house at the time. And I thought, oh, that's really weird. And it's now we've started to put it together that there may be this mimic. H has had experiences hearing me. I've now seen Raph. I've heard somebody sound like Becky. Noah's had experiences with people that sound like H. So yeah, it's been a little strange.
Aaron and the kids have been in Ottawa for the last 2 months. And even as close as last week, I was getting the house ready for our Airbnb guests, and I was on the second floor getting our bathroom ready. I heard the back door go, I heard footsteps in the parlour, and I heard Aaron stand at the bottom of the stairs and shout, "Delightful." He calls me Delight or Delightful, which is sarcasm because I'm neither of those things. It was his voice, and it's just like, all the other times it had happened, Aaron had been in the house, so it was plausible that it was him. It took a beat for me to not respond because there's no way Aaron is here when he's 7 hours away. But this time I was like, what the hell? And so I ended up shouting out, "Yeah, you're not going to get me like that," like a crazy person.
That wasn't the only time that the mimic presented itself as Aaron.
So I'm an insomniac. When Aaron's here, rather than sort of disturbing him, I come downstairs and put on TV or paint or do something. Aaron has this thing which is really helpful as an insomniac. He says, "Why don't you just go to sleep?" Which at some point will lead to his death. I was downstairs in the library and I was lying watching TV, Aaron came into the library, and I looked over at him and went, "What?" And he looked at me and he went, "Why don't you just go to sleep?" So I tutted and rolled my eyes at him and refused to talk to him, and he went away. And it was a few minutes later where I realised I hadn't heard him come down. I hadn't heard him go back up. The dogs hadn't stirred because they will always follow you downstairs. Got up and went upstairs, and Aaron was asleep in bed.
When they spoke later that day, he assured her he was asleep all night. Then, on another occasion,
Noah and her friend Emma were here at the house. We were here, Aaron and I were here. It was like 10 o'clock at night. We had gone up to bed. We were watching something in bed. The girls decided they wanted to come and steal the cake that was in the kitchen. Came downstairs. The lights were off, so they went through to the kitchen, turned the lights on. They were just doing that, and they both heard me call their names from the Pink Parlour library area. And they had just come past the bedroom, so they knew they could see us. You know, they knew we were in bed watching TV. So they were smart enough not to respond or go and look, but it scared the living hell out of them. They were terrified because they said that they could feel whatever it was standing in the doorway of the Pink Parlour, and they hated it. I think about it afterwards and definitely feel very uneasy about it, because why is it trying to pretend to be someone else, especially with the girls trying to get you to follow it to a different place?
You know, it's the classic inner woods thing. Until you sit down very quietly and take on the smell and the movement of everything else around you, then you start to see the birds, the animals, the bugs, the nightlife. And the longer you sit there, the more you become part of it. I think the longer we've been in here, the more we become part of it and see more.
Aaron had always been on the fence about the house. It's not that he didn't believe his family. He just didn't have proof. Until the house gave him some.
So Jenny, the first time I thought H wasn't crazy about all this ghost nonsense. We were sitting in the TV family room area on the horseshoe couch, and there was a coffee table there. It was, I don't know, morning time, nothing particularly special about the time of day. And the coffee cup slid off the table. Not that the table was slanted, but it was pushed slowly to the edge and then pushed onto the carpet. And we both just sort of looked at it and went, "Oh, somebody wants attention," and we cleaned it up and carried about our day, because stuff like that has become, unfortunately, rather mundane.
He downplays it with everything. And like when that coffee cup slid, when it started to slide, he looked and didn't really kind of clock it, and then it kept going, and he looked at it and he looked like a kid. His eyes were so wide, and it came all the way off the table and dropped, and he was frozen. And so he does downplay it and joke about it, and he is funny, but he was like totally freaked.
Keep note that Heather said that he totally freaked. It'll apply later in this episode.
It was a perfectly normal day. There were no dogs around. The table is flat and stable. The only explanation is that either gravity had decided to change to be sideways for a split second, and or somebody had pushed it. The most obvious thing is that somebody pushed it. And none of us were going to do it because it made a mess on the carpet, which was a real pain to clean up because it's coffee.
I must have been unbearable. I was so smug because I was like, "I told you so." Since then, it's really escalated for him.
Again, like most things between 1:30 and 3:30 in the morning, is our Sonos speakers turn on. Speakers will randomly turn on and start playing, and I've got to frantically figure out how to turn them off without just going and unplugging them. And I think anybody who owns a Sonos knows ours are particularly difficult because it's a large building and we've got lots of them. I have the Sonos app on my phone. It says, you got to open the app, you got to choose your input, you got to make sure you're logged in, you got to go find your song. The app was not open on my phone. I hadn't used that actual speaker for months because it's not in a part of the house that we play music on very often. And it woke us all up. So I don't know how they got turned on. You also can't turn it on from outside unless you're on our Wi-Fi, and how you would figure out or want to do that is beyond me. And the only person that has the credentials is me and Raf. Since then, I've had the speakers turn on, particularly if I've been in the house by myself. But when it came on outside our bedroom, I was there by myself, it went from nothing to volume all the way up. So I woke up with a start and turned it off, and I didn't really think about it very much. I cannot remember what the song was. I would have sworn it was CCR. I want to say Running Through the Jungle because I love that song, but I think that's my imagination.
It's just your imagination. The creepy occurrences with Aaron continue.
Probably only about 3 months ago. In bed, I don't even know at the time. It feels like we'd been asleep a while. So probably early hours of the morning. I'm woken up by Aaron slapping me, like full on slapping me. And so I look over and I'm like, what are you doing? And he is staring at me, eyes like wide open. He looks horror struck, and he's just pointing with his right arm, not even rolling back over, he's just pointing at the door. And so I look over to the door, and there's someone standing at the door, looking through the crack, and you can see an eye, and you can see the shape of the face, man's face, you can see the body shape there. So I'm looking, and they just stand there. There's no shame. It wasn't like a shadow out of the corner of your eye. They stood there. And so I look back at Aaron, and he's just still staring at me. And I just tell him to go back to sleep, so he closes his eyes, and when I look back at the door, they're gone.
But yeah, I'm trying to think what else has happened. Oh yes, there's the howling. That was a little weird. We had
there's like something going on upstairs.
I can't hear it. I don't hear it.
I think that's why we were looking at it. I think it's because you were talking, but as you were talking, we were interrupted by heavy footsteps walking around upstairs. I actually feel it. Yeah.
Water mains.
It does.
Which are not in this part of the building.
I had to leave that in. Sometimes the house doesn't want to be talked about, and it lets Aaron and Heather know.
This was the night after the first day of investigation.
A number of investigators come, led by Richard Estep, but there were a number of people with him, from clairvoyants to sort of technical investigators to historical investigators. They were all in the house.
And during that investigation, we'd had some pretty heated moments. We were getting EVPs and readings where people were, particularly a man and a woman, were telling us to be quiet and not share secrets and not to tell that and to go away.
What was interesting, the night they all left, again, in that sort of 1:30 to 3:30 period, H and I were in bed and asleep.
It'd been a long, long day. We went to bed and we were woken up by this howling.
Not, in my mind, not animal howling. It sounded like human howling was a sort of screaming howling noise, and it was loud.
So loud. And our first thought was, oh God, the dogs, is one of them in trouble? We looked over and the dogs are waking up at the same time as us. They're there and they're silent and this howling is going on.
We were woken by it, and then the noise continued, as opposed to when you wake up and it stops and you can't tell whether you're imagining it.
It went on for a long time. And by a long time, I mean maybe 20 seconds. You're fully awake and we're looking at each other and we're saying to each other, what the hell is going on? Where is that? Where are the dogs? What's that? Where are the kids?
Couldn't really tell where it was coming from, but it felt, for me anyway, was around the stairwell in the house, which is the old part of the building.
It felt like it was coming from the stairway, the main staircase, but it was echoing through the whole house. You know, it felt like the house was full of this sound. And then it stopped. And so we're like, what was that? And we talked for a minute or two, and we are just putting our heads back down. And suddenly there are these loud bang, bang, bang.
Yeah, there was banging along with it. It was, house felt angry, like it was smashing and shouting.
The house like shook. The lamps on the bedside tables shook. The dogs started barking. The house was really reinforcing that they did not want the questions being asked that we asked. It was crazy.
Yeah, that was strange.
Some of the spirits want to be talked about.
So we have, in 3 brackets of guests that I talk about, or residents that we have, Paulie falls into the second category of she's a regular. So she doesn't live here. She'll tell you she doesn't live here, but she comes in very regularly. Noah started experiencing very quickly after we moved in, someone sitting on her bed. And so when we had the investigators here, we were using the Ouija board. We were doing a session, and this woman came through and she identified herself as Paulie. She gave us her surname, her husband's name, her children's name, and where she was in town. She told us when she died. She told us about her husband, the fact that he had his funeral here, she didn't. One of the investigators was able to go and validate everything, all in records. None of us are from the area. None of us could know this. And we asked the question of, do you know who's sitting on Noah's bed? And the answer came back, yes. So we asked, is it you? And it came back, yes. So the question was, why do you sit on Noah's bed? And, you know, with time came back that Noah reminds her of her daughter. I'm going to cry as I say this. So then we were like, that's so lovely. So why, but why do you keep seeing Noah? And she spelled out love.
Noah also called in from Ottawa.
One figure or spirit, you could say, that kept coming up while living in the house was a very sweet woman named Paulie. She, we talked to her a few times through Ouija boards, through pentacles, all of it. She had this bond to me where she would watch over me and communicate with me whenever she could. She even, when we asked her why, she spelled out love on the Ouija board, which was very sweet. She was a recurring figure throughout the years of living at the house, and unlike other experiences as sitting on my bed, slamming doors, or mimicking my dad and my mom, she was always so sweet, so innocent, and always was just so comforting. She was like no other experience I had at the house, which was just so amazing to have, knowing that there was at least one spirit there among all of them that was truly just looking out for me.
Like, it makes me tear up now. It was every single one of us, these like 6'4" hardened, investigators, everybody had tears running down their face. It was incredible. Someone loves my daughter so much. She wants to keep an eye on her and protect her. Amazing.
The EVPs that have been caught in the Blumberg home have been pretty astounding. EVP stands for Electronic Voice Phenomenon. Within ghost hunting and parapsychology, electronic voice phenomenon are the sounds found on electronic recordings that are interpreted as spirit voices. Here are just a few.
So one of the things we're getting better at is remembering sometimes to turn on voice recorders and equipment when we think we hear something. But one of the first ones that I got still actually terrifies me to listen to it. It was like 5 a.m, walked into the family room, and as I was walking in, In my left ear, I heard someone say basement. And so I lifted up my phone, put the voice recorder on, and asked the question, what's in the basement?
What's in the basement?
And a male voice that isn't friendly says back to me, I am. I sat on the couch and kept replaying it for probably like 3 hours until other people in the house got up, and then made them listen to it to see if I was crazy. And then of course I actually sent it to you, Danielle, and it said, please listen to this, do whatever, am I nuts? And it actually terrified me. It still does, it absolutely does. But I didn't go into the basement for maybe 2 months after that.
This is the actual EVP slowed down.
What's in the basement?
Our interview was being conducted in the basement. Just thought I'd mention that.
We've had some cute EVPs and some different things. We have another one that actually was captured by Richard and his team. It was captured in the main bathroom in the house, which actually, when the house was built, was 2 bedrooms. People are talking and sort of starting to plan out what they are going to do for the investigation in that room. And they're asking about who's here. And you hear a little girl in the background who says, I'm right beside Daddy.
Would embalm and work on the bodies. Goodness.
That one's not creepy. It's actually kind of wonderful, but it's just crazy to hear it.
I'll make it creepy for you. There was a tragedy that happened within one of the past families that lived at the house. It resulted in the death of 4 of their children. It was something that the family didn't speak of considering the nature of the event. Listen carefully. It's a disembodied voice in the background of a little girl playfully saying, I'm right beside Daddy. And in the local cemetery, they are all buried right beside Daddy.
Would embalm and work on the bodies. Goodness.
When we were doing the investigation, there was a lot of us being told to shush and stop and not do it. She didn't want us asking questions about her children. And I think that's what it came through. She literally shouts in quite a tone, stop.
So naturally, while I was there, in the basement, we did a spirit box session. It scans through radio frequencies to connect with spirits through EVP. We had a lot of static come through until we talked about the mimic. Earlier on, I asked you to note when Heather said that Aaron was totally freaked. On the spirit box session, I hear a voice come through, and it's Heather's voice. She's calling Aaron's name and then repeating something that she said in the interview, how Aaron was totally freaked at the coffee cup sliding off of the table. Then someone says, it's learning. So I hear, in Heather's voice, Aaron, yeah, I freaked. It's learning. But I'll leave it up to you to decide.
Aaron. And learning.
Scary, right? A while back now, a friend of mine from college died while skateboarding. He always helped me mount my images for my projects. He tried to convince me constantly to go skydiving because he was a skydiving instructor, which makes it even crazier that he died while on the ground. We were only acquaintances, but I talk about him often. I never imagined in a million years he would ever come through a spirit box. Heather asks who we're speaking to, and a voice says Bryce. That was his name. One of the other spirits in the house asks him, Bryce, what happened? And he says, I slipped.
Bryce.
I didn't realize that was caught until I was editing this episode. And it's always open to interpretation.
There's a lot about this that can be really scary, but there's this other side to paranormal where, for whatever reason, these energies, these spirits, these ghosts, they stay because they want to stay, and they still feel the emotions they do, and they make attachments to you. But I love this house. I feel such a deep connection to it. I think it's borderline magical. I really do.
But it's weird because both Mum and Dad and Noah still go on about, vivid experiences. And I wish I could say I've had something, but it's been so calm in the house. Which is strange. Not that I don't believe them. It's more I'm wondering why I am being avoided at this point. But I guess I can't be too upset about being left alone, so.
I think looking back over the last 4 years, it started out really as thinking about what can we do with this abandoned place architecturally. The activity in the house, as much as we joked about it, has become a real thing and has become far more of a focal point of how we think about the building. Those who come and go through it with us, whether it's family or friends, and most people experience something, and it's becoming more apparent that this has been one of the most haunted places they've ever been to. Interesting to feel like a custodian of it, and I think it's changing as a thing we own. It's nice to be able to share it with people. It's definitely becoming a place where people want to come and see and experience with us, which is great. But I'm also loath to give it up. So there's also an element of, if not us, who? Because left unchecked, who knows what would happen to it.
Honestly, I guess I am obsessed with the place. I love it. I am so deeply connected. I want this to be my home, or at least mine to look after as much as I can for the rest of my life.
Man, I love the Blumberg house. Special thanks to Heather, Aaron, Raph, and Noah again for sharing their experiences. Do you have a story you've been hiding? Send us a voice note at hello.geist.podcast@gmail.com. All experiences are welcome. This episode was written and directed by Danielle Matar. Original music and FX by Beau Jensen. Mixing and sound by Adam Esker. Geist logo is by Jake Carruthers. Follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at Geist_podcast. We will take the gratitude to our graves for your support. And until next time, sleep tight.